we are going to review for your summative. In order to do well on this summative, remember, you have to be able to solve systems of equations by graphing, solve by substitution, and solve by elimination. So to help you with the review, I'm going to go down the left side of this sheet and do the odd problems. You then can go through the even side yourself. Remember, you can always pause the video, fast forward, rewind, and repeat. If you feel like you don't need support in one area, go ahead and fast forward so that you can use this more like an answer key. If you need the step-by-step guidance, then you can pause and rewind and do what you need to do to remember all of these skills. We'll start with number 1, which is solving by graphing. We're going to be looking for the place where two lines cross on this coordinate plane. The first thing I notice is that neither of these equations is in a slope-intercept form, which is how we graph. We need the equations to look like y equals mx plus b. We need the y alone on the left, which allows us to graph. One by one, I'm going to have to do that, and then from there I'm going to have to identify the slope and the y-intercept. The first equation I'm going to rewrite so that I can do my algebra work, get it into slope-intercept form. If I want the y alone, I need to subtract my x's. I'm actually going to go and remind myself that there is one x over here, so to completely get rid of it, I should subtract 1x. I have to do the same thing on the right. So I get y equals negative 1x plus 3. Because this was a positive 3, that translates into a plus 3 down here. I'm going to take my second equation and I'm going to rewrite that as well. Make my line down the equal sign. I've got a little more work to do here. I have 3 x's that I have to subtract like last time. But when I do that, I notice my y is not alone like in the last one. I still have a little work to do to get it alone. Remember, on this side, you cannot combine a plain number like 14 with a number attached to an x like minus 3x. So we just write them separately, sort of put them in a list form. I'm going to extend my line here. In order to really get y alone, I'm going to have to separate it from this times 2. I do the opposite. I divide by 2. But if I do that, I have to divide every piece of this equation by 2 as well. I get y alone, but now I've got something here to contend with. I've got negative 3 over 2. I have to think to myself, can I do 3 divided by 2 in my calculator and get a whole number? I can't. So I'm going to have to leave this as an improper fraction. I also have to think about whether or not this fraction can be reduced so that I can fit it on the graph. In this case, 3 and 2 are both prime numbers. They cannot be divided by anything except themselves. So it looks like this is going to be 3 over 2x. And then here I've got 14 divided by 2. Everything is positive, so that's plus 7. My two equations are here and here. And from there, I'm going to have to identify the important pieces to graph them. This first equation has a, sorry about that. Let's re-highlight here. No, they're pink. My first equation has a y-intercept of positive 3. Remember, the y-intercept is our starting point, and it tells us where along the y-axis my first dot is. It looks like the first dot is at positive 3. So I am going to go to the origin and count up 1, 2, 3 to positive 3, and I'm going to make a dot at positive 3. That's my first dot. And I'm sorry this is sloppy. It's hard to do with my stylus. Now I've got to take the slope. The slope is the number before the x, negative 1. A slope of negative 1 is actually, let me make a little arrow here, the same as negative 1 over 1. Remember, all whole numbers are actually over a positive 1, which means that my slope is taking me down and to the right from my first dot. So I'm going to go ahead and start counting down 1 and to the right 1. So here's my first dot. I'll go down 1 and to the right 1 and make a dot right there. And then from that dot, I'm going to go down 1 and to the right, make another dot. Remember, a slope of 1 or negative 1 is the best deal you can get because it's just a diagonal line, down and to the right. So I'm going to keep going with my diagonal as best I can with my stylus here. And then I can actually fill in the opposite slope, which is up and to the left, because with a diagonal line it's pretty easy to see where this line is going, right? And if I make a straight line through there, that's my first line. Go down to the second one, I've got the same process. I begin my line at positive 7, so I go to the origin along the y-axis, which is the up and down, and I go up to positive 7, make a dot, okay. And from there I'm going to follow my slope, which tells me with a slope of negative 3 over 2, I go down 3 and to the right 2. So here's my starting dot. I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, and to the right 1, 2. There's my dot right there. Then I have to do the same thing again. From that dot, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, and to the right 1, 2. There's my next dot. And then from there, go down 1, 2, 3, to the right 1, 2. And let's see here, down 1, 2, 3, and to the right 1, 2. Looks like that's my spot. X marks the spot. Right here. I probably should have made more blue dots so that I know exactly where they cross, but I think I've got it. So my answer to this is the coordinate pair where they meet. So now I have to identify the coordinate pair. I start at my origin, and remember that your coordinate pair, your x and y, the first number tells you where to go left or right from the origin, and the second number tells you how far up or down to go from the origin. So I start here and I make my way over. It looks like I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I went to the right, which is positive 8, but then I went down, which is negative to negative 5. My final answer for this is 8, negative 5. Moving along to number 3, we're getting into substitution again. With substitution, we need to make sure that we have a statement that says our y or our x is equal to something. That something, the expression on the other side of the equal sign, we're going to put in place of the x or the y and rewrite our problem and do some math. So I see in number 3, it already tells me exactly that where I see a y, that is equal to, or I can replace it with, 7x plus 6. I'm going to go down and find my y in the second equation. There it is. I'm going to put parentheses around it. And I'm going to rewrite the second equation. The only thing I'm going to change is that instead of writing a y, I'm going to write the stuff that's equal to it. I'm going to write 7x plus 6. So here we go. Let's rewrite 4x minus 3. None of that changes. Now I'm taking the y out and I'm replacing it with 7x plus 6. Then I have to finish with equals 16. Okay, so I've got this really long equation, and in substitution equations, it's really easy to figure out where to start because we always start with the distributive property. We've got a negative 3 here, and we've got to multiply that negative 3 times 7x and times 6. I'm going to do that first. I'm going to multiply negative 3 times positive 7x, which gives me negative 21x. Then I'm going to multiply negative 3 times positive 6, which gives me negative 18. The last thing I need to do is carry down the pieces I haven't used yet. I haven't used 4x, so I'm going to bring that down and rewrite it. And I haven't used 16, or equals 16. So I'll bring that down. I am going to, let's see, I need to combine my x's. I've got positive 4x and negative 21x, and those two need to be combined into one group of x's. Positive 4 and negative 21 mean that I'm going to have an answer that's negative because there are more negatives. And one way you can think about this is canceling out the negative 21. So I can count backwards and think, okay, negative 20, negative 19, negative 18, negative 17x. I had to count back 4. Negative 17x minus 18 equals 16. Now I've got a regular two-step equation to solve. I've got to add 18 to both sides, which gives me negative 17x equals 16 plus 18. 6 plus 8 is 14, 34. Divide by negative 17. Divide by negative 17. X is equal to negative 2. That's great. I'm halfway there. I'm halfway to my answer. I've got my x value, which is the first one. And now I've got to use my x value to calculate my y. I'm going to take this first equation because it's quite easy to calculate y. I'm going to rewrite it. And because I know my x value now, I can put parentheses around the x and I can replace it with negative 2 because I now know that x is equal to negative 2. So I've got 7 times negative 2 plus 6. If I do my multiplication here, 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. Negative 14 plus positive 6 is negative 8, which means my y value is equal to negative 8. Bring that up to my final answer. And there we go. Negative 2, negative 8.